First, I probably should unmute myself. Welcome to Lighting Bot. We have another episode for you guys. We have Alex Wahl from Sledgehammer. I do apologize if I'm stopping a lot in during the interview. It's mostly because I have a little bit of fever or something going on. So we will trust that Alex Wahl carries the interview. He has some good stuff for us. I've seen some of it already in before we started, so it looks really cool. So I'm gonna add him into this live chat now, and hopefully he can introduce himself. Welcome, Alex.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Alex Wahl. I'm a lighting artist at Sledgehammer Games. Been here for about a year. Been working in the game industry for about 2 years now.
That's good. So we always like to ask the question for every lighting artist to explain their role as if I or other people have zero knowledge. And that's just because sometimes, the roles are different from studio to studio. So how would you explain yours?
So basically here at Sledgehammer, our role is we're supposed to light scenes and MP maps, SP maps, or whatever. Light them in a way that portrays what AD suspects. For those, AD is art direction. And then we're supposed to get certain moods, highlight certain player paths, highlight certain artworks. And then we also do a little bit of coding on the side. We do a little more coding than other studios. And then we do some other technical work, such as handling light maps and light grids. Yeah, that's pretty much what is expected here at Sledgehammer.
Cool. So a bit more demanding than some studios, perhaps. I remember when I was at Ubisoft, I didn't have to focus too much about the technical part. It was mostly just, focus on troubleshooting and lighting. So it's always interesting to listen to the different responsibility that people have.
Definitely.
So that does beg to the question then, what's your average day of work? Like if someone were to walk through your shoes, what would they experience?
So pretty much each day is different. We do have a decent amount of meetings. So I mean, depending on day, some days are heavier on meetings. So sometimes I'm in a meeting all day. Sometimes I'm working basically all day. It kind of depends on what is whether the tasks in front of me, whether if it's an SP map or an MP map. Most of the time, I like to switch each week between SP and MP, so I give a little love to both of the things I'm working on. Other than that, it's basically making sure I handle any bugs or anything that are come my way for the most part. But yeah, usually it's a mixture between working on SP and MP, whether it's lighting or fixing any baking issues that I see, or if it's either coding for maybe cinematics or anything like that.
So, okay, so how many lighting artists is in the team that you're working on?
Currently, I believe there's 11 right now.
Oh, that's quite a few.
Yeah, some of it is from our Melbourne studio. So I think there's 2 at our Melbourne studio right now. So actually, I think there's 10 of us. Yeah, there's 10 of us. 2 at our Melbourne studio, and then 8 at our Foster City studio. And we're looking to expand because we are opening a studio up in Canada as well. So
Okay, that's cool. And so you said there's a single player and multiplayer?
yes,
Right, so that's what you mean when you say SP and MP, correct?
yes.
All right. So do you work on all aspects like cinematic, SP, and MP, or do you focus on one area?
Mostly all aspects. I mean, it's most of the time like, hey, I'm given a certain map and I'm supposed to work on either I split it with someone or I work on everything entirely myself. Whether it be like all the cinematics for it, or maybe sometimes won't even do the cinematics for it. Sometimes someone else will get the cinematics for me, or I'll do the cinematics for someone else. It kind of depends on like workloads and who's available.
Cool. And what do you like lighting then? Do you like cinematic, multiplayer, single player? Because they are a bit different.
Multiplayer is definitely easier. I don't have to worry with much coding on multiplayer. I think I like both most of the time. Cinematics are actually really fun. You do a lot of coding, so I mean, once that's all set up and like all the animations and everything in, it's actually quite fun to light cinematics. You definitely get to shape characters in certain ways that are awesome.
Cool. So what would you say was the key difference though, from lighting cinematic versus single player versus multiplayer? Well, is there some key differences you could talk about?
Lighting wise, I mean, for multiplayer, you're definitely making sure the visibility of the scene is definitely there. And you're shaping sometimes more. You're trying to get certain shapes, certain leading the players in certain directions so that they know that there's certain pathways. Um, Single player, you do a little bit more shaping, but the path is usually more one directional, so you can sometimes the environment just leads itself, so you don't really have to do work sometimes. And then in cinematics, you're really just trying to get the players to really shine and get them to have like cool angles with like light rims and stuff like that.
All right, that's cool. So there is some differences. Does it require a different skill level, or would you say what are some of the key skill levels you need to do this kind of
So
lighting?
here at Sledgehammer, sometimes our more technical people handle SP. The people who know coding the most, because we do a lot of coding. So scripting lights on and off, scripting different things like we do like DOFs, motion blur, stuff like that. So most of the time, a little bit more technical people handle our SP, and then less technical sometimes handles our MP maps. It kind of just depends.
All right, cool. Um, it's definitely interesting to see how people go on about these kind of different things. One thing I wanted to talk about was you have an interesting leap from kind of deciding I want to do programming, and then you do a bit of it, and then suddenly you decide one day that I'm gonna be a lighting artist. So what happened? Like you studied somewhere, and then you did that. So why don't we take it from the time you were a student and work our way up your CV, I guess.
Yeah, so I went to college for advanced computer science and game programming. Actually, I originally only went for advanced computer science, and then like midway through, I was like, "Hey, let's get into the game industry." So I picked up game programming. I was there for about like 3.5 years, 3 years, yeah, 3 years. Um, and during that time, I had a couple internships with some game studios. One of them in particular actually needed a VFX and a lighting artist, but most of the people on the team were environment artists and or programmers, so I had the free time to try to learn it a little bit. By no means was it good that I did, but it definitely sparked my interest. And then I graduated from college and spent a couple years trying to do programming, and then I ultimately just got bored of it. Programming is not something that I thoroughly enjoy, especially when it comes to the more technical programming. So luckily here at Sledgehammer, most of the program we do is not super technical. I would say it's easier to pick up than regular programming. But when I was not doing any programming and I was looking for something to do, one of the people I went to college with got a job at 343 as a lighting artist. So I reached out to him, talked to him a little bit, and he helped me along the way and gave me some good tools and stuff and helped me with my lighting and gave me some good direction.
All right, cool. So it's always good to have some help then, someone to kind of speed track your progress, basically.
Definitely.
Right. That's good. So no, we don't need to go into details, but different companies and different countries, obviously, they pay differently and they have overtime. How's that where you're working right now? Is there a lot of overtime? Is there, do you get paid for it? Is there, or is things kind of organized in that sense?
I for the most part, I'm really happy with my pay here at Sledgehammer. I don't have any real complaints about it. Now as for overtime, I think we manage our overtime very well. I'm not really putting in like 10 extra hours a week. Maybe at the most, I'm putting like 2 to 3 hours a week. But for the most part, we're managing it pretty well. Sometimes we'll hit crunch just depending on deadlines and stuff like that. But I don't really have any complaints about overtime either. I mean, I think we're doing a pretty good job at it here of managing it.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, we're pretty good at it at interior nights as well. We
Nice.
we don't actually have any crunch. It's more of a 1 day or 2 day before the milestones for Microsoft. Certain people have to do something and fix something. But other than that, it's I mean, the proper definition of a crunch is like several weeks of overtime, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how that is in some companies, but luckily that's not the case here. So that's good. Yeah. So, because your role is quite varied, you have different type of responsibilities, I guess. What's your favorite part of your job?
I definitely so definitely the people here are one of my favorite parts of this job. But besides that, I think really portraying moods, getting certain looks, and then like watching a map go from just like regular design lighting where they just put in like just fill lights and just to make things visible, and then they just have like a regular time of day, and then taking that from just like some really cool mood and portraying a scene in a certain way and watching people's reactions once they see it is really awesome. I think that's really fun. Is really like getting people to feel certain things.
All right. And
Bless
sorry, I tried muting. I was waiting for it, and then it happened after you finished. So what's the hardest part then with your role?
Probably all the technical work we do. Definitely. I think it's a mixture of programming, especially if you don't know any programming. It's a mixture of trying to definitely optimize for last gen consoles. Especially when you have like a look of a scene and you're like, oh great, now I have to try to figure out how to reduce all of this for PS4, and it's like and then trying to do light grid work sometimes could be a little bit difficult. Trying to like make sure everything's baking correctly and everything looks proper can be difficult at times.
Hmm. Has there been any situation where you have lost the visual quality because it needed to be optimized to a certain level?
um Yes and no. I mean, there was a case where like I had to switch lights to static. It generally gave the same look, but then I lost like certain shadows for like player shadows and stuff like that. But there was nothing really I could do about it. I had to get it optimized for PS4. So um, yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's not too different. It's just like you'll lose certain shadows from like dynamic things, but other than that, like I keep the look pretty similar.
Okay. Um, so, what are the most important skills then for your role?
Um, Definitely. So it's not a must, but definitely having some sort of programming experience is very good to help. Understanding basic lighting stuff like color composition is definitely one. We do if you have a little bit of Photoshop experience, if you have a little bit of DaVinci Resolve experience, those go a long way. Um, yeah, I think basically like most basic lighting artists skill sets are necessary, and then some of those other ones I mentioned are pluses.
Okay. So we have a question for you, and just a reminder for all the viewers, you are welcome to leave a question wherever you're watching. We're doing Twitch for the first time now, so if you're there, leave a question in the chat, and it should pop up, and I will know it's working. Same for YouTube and same for LinkedIn. So I have a question by Kevin Nally. What programming language do you use in your workflow then?
We don't have exact programming language. It's kind of a mixture between like C and Python, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, I know a variety of programming languages that do help, and like I'll see certain things from other programming languages that
Cool.
comes a long way.
So I think this is a good opportunity to maybe do a breakdown. You had something that you wanted to.
Yeah. Let me share my screen.
Also gives me a break from talking before I vomit all over this live stream.
Alrighty, cool.
Cool. So here we have the share screen.
Yeah, so I'm actually this is my off to war shot. I'm gonna break down basically my steps from beginning to end in my lighting process, and then one of the feedbacks I sometimes get about my lighting work is I have like a painterly effect to some of my lighting work, and I'm gonna try to break down how I get that effect. So yeah, so one of the first things I do when approaching a scene is one, if I can look for reference material, I'll try to look for reference material. But sometimes like you just know what you want and you just go for it. This was one of the things where I just knew what I want and I went for it. I did look for reference material for like background and like trying to get you'll see trying to get the hills to read as depth so that it's not look like it's just falling off the world. So yeah, so first I start off with a pretty block out stage. Sometimes if I have models, I'll throw the other models, I'll throw them in. But yeah, I try to block everything out. Sometimes I'll color coordinate stuff so I know like, hey, this is gonna be a tree. Maybe these are gonna be mountains. This will be my character. And then from there, it's all about adding the geo and then trying to get the composition correct. You'll see like I'll slowly add some more compositional pieces over time. And then I'll stub in some lighting sometimes because sometimes your sun is a compositional piece. So it's good to get that in there early sometimes and try to get the angles and everything like that looking correct. And then sometimes I'll slowly add fog to try to see how the depth looks on the mountains. See if does this look like it's falling off the world, or does it actually look like it has depth? And then most of the time when I'm working on my personal pieces, it's all about composition. So like I've done like zero lighting work here, and it's mainly just trying to figure out the composition of the scene, playing with assets, trying to get assets looking correctly, playing with materials, doing some foreground work, midground work, background work, even some particle effects with the tree leaves. And then from there, I'll slowly add in other compositional pieces like doing fog to give a little more depth in some of these midground pieces, adding other character pieces. And this was, yeah, so right there, this is the first time I've done additional lighting work, which is I started doing the key rims and fill on these two character pieces. You'll also slowly see in some of the background pieces, some of them will get some rims and some highlights. And then I started adding post-processing effects once I was pretty happy with most of the composition, and I got some of the basic lighting lights in like key rim fill. And then from here, it's just more of adjusting composition, making sure the player doesn't feel or the character doesn't feel stiff. You can see now I added some highlights in the background. Yeah, this was the last shot. Yeah, it's really, well, like I said, most of this time when I was working on this project, which I think was about like maybe a month and a half, for about a month, like it was mainly working on the composition. I think composition is one of the things that we should work on the most. A good composition does go a very long way, and most of the time, lighting does not take me very long to do when working on personal pieces. Yeah, that's pretty much. Oh, and then for like the painterly effect that I get in some of my pieces, I think it's a mixture of like doing like fog work and getting the fog to look a certain way, and then the post processing. I think the post processing that you saw, that jump, really helped with that painterly effect, going from this to this. Yeah, for the most part, most of the time, like I don't think post processing you don't need too complicated of stuff. Like I think a nice grain, maybe some ambient occlusion, some chromatic aberration does go a long way. Like I don't think it needs to be super strong, but I think just a little bit helps. Yeah, that's pretty much how my breakdown goes for this piece. You're muted.
So you look for the assets you need, or how does that work?
Yeah, most of the time I look for the assets that I need. Sadly, I don't have a huge amount of 3D modeling experience, so most of the time I go look for assets. Luckily, I do have some environment artist friends that sometimes like to work on stuff, so I'll ask them for certain pieces, and they'll help me out, and we'll do scenes together and stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, I'm looking on like Unreal Engine. I'm looking on some of the 3D websites like Sketchfab and stuff like that for certain assets.
And because you had a programming background, uh, how did you pick up on the skills necessarily, like composition, color, lighting? Like what happened?
Most of the stuff I found just come from searching on Google, and then just like experience of just doing things over and over again. Like one of my favorite Google videos is called CG composition in CG, something like that. It's I think one of the best composition videos out there, and I've watched that several times over and over again. Other than that, it's just like reading articles, looking at other people's work is actually really good. Like if you take someone's work and really break down the composition of it, you'll really start to understand composition a lot more. Like certain elements, like you can see here, like this little framing that I did right here, like I didn't have that at first. See, I didn't have it right here, and then adding that really brought it the tension closer to this because it framed it a little bit more. Yeah.
All right, and the leaves, I'm assuming, are particles.
Yeah, I didn't make those. Those came with the trees. Yeah.
So how did you get this inspiration? Where are you getting inspiration from?
Sometimes the inspiration just strikes, and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if I did this. Maybe it was because because I was looking at certain things, I was watching something. It's always a variety of different things. Like sometimes I'll just be scrolling through ArtStation and I'll come across a really cool concept. I'm like, hey, it'd be really cool if instead of like this here, it would be like that over there or something like that, like for composition wise. And sometimes it's just like, oh, I'm watching a movie and I see like a dude with a horse walking away, and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool, like something like this or something like that. Yeah, I think inspiration comes from everywhere, and it's just what you like, I guess, what your taste is.
And how many lights did you use? Like, where did you put the lights, and did you use a lot of them? Or
For the most part, it's mainly sun and sky. For most of this, there's a light around the windmills, and there's a light around the house. So that's probably like 3 or 4 lights right there. For the character, I try to start with just 3 lights. So just key, rim, and fill, I think is key. I do like to do extra key sometime or key rim lights sometimes. Highlights of certain things, like there's a rim light around this leg. There's a little bit of rim around this. There's a little bit of fill right here. For the most part, I try to keep it to 3. Sometimes I think at max I'll go to is like 7. Yeah.
And do you use shadows on all your lights, or do you turn them off when you do rim light? How does that work?
Sometimes I'll do new shadow lights. It kind of just depends on what type of shadows I'm getting, and yeah, I think that's key is what type of shadows you're getting. Like, most of the time when I'm lighting personal scenes, I don't keep optimization in mind. Like this thing, I think runs at like 14 frames. So it's not great for like video games, but like just for like a still shot, I think it works. Yeah.
I think it's pretty common when people do their own PCs. They, unless they want to show they can handle optimization, they normally just make it look pretty, don't they?
Yeah, it's hard to show off optimization with a still like image, like unless you do like an actual like fly through the level. Like I think if you're just doing still image, like who cares about optimization? Like just like go with what you think looks good.
So, because you have a bit of a programming and technical lighting artist type of background, do you ever use any custom coding programming on your PCs to elevate it or solve something, or do you normally use what Unreal Engine just provides?
Most of the time I just use what Unreal Engine provides. I don't like most of the time this doesn't really with still images. I don't think you really need much coding. Like there are like I could sometimes handle like technical issues more than others. But I think for the most part, like Unreal is great, and I think it's a great engine, especially if you're starting to learn it. I don't see there's typically not a huge amount of issues that I come across with Unreal. But yeah, for the most part, I don't do any like special coding or anything for most of my scenes.
Are you able to talk about what game you're working on right now, by the way? I didn't ask you.
I'm able to say I am working on COD 2021. I can't really go into much detail after that, but yeah, that's pretty much all I'm able to say.
All right, that's cool. That's something, right, guys? All right. Do you want to show the other breakdown of your other piece?
Yeah, definitely. Let me pull this one up. So this is my Dark Knight scene. This one is, you'll see it's a little bit less. So this one is older than the other one, and you'll see my. So I'll start doing lighting before I finish the composition up. I don't recommend this. I've come a long way since this scene, and I think my process is a lot more thought out, and it's a lot better than it used to be. But funny story about this one is it actually started out as just a test map because I wanted to test out whether or not I could get the same look with fully dynamic setup rather than having any sort of like stationary baked lighting in there. So this is actually a fully dynamic scene. There is actually no static lighting in this scene at all, but it did start out as just a test between static and dynamic lighting, and then inspiration struck and I was like, oh, let's run with this. So yeah, you'll see same thing. Basically, I try to block out certain things, block out my background vista, block out my midground, foreground, and block out my key images. And then from there, like sometimes I'll draw over all of my over this block out, and I will like try to get a mindset of what I want. And some of these images, some of these shapes do portray certain things. Like this, this does portray firelight. This is like, hey, I want to get moon rim light here. I want to get fire rim light here. Maybe I'll do characters. Maybe I don't know what to do here. Maybe inspiration will come along the way, like see lantern lighting, moon lighting, all the rims for all the buildings and whatnot. And then from there, I just start adding assets and try to block everything in. And then sometimes, like I said, I do start to get the sun and sunlight in here and try to, because that does play a compositional piece sometimes. And I think from here I went a little too far with. I started doing some extra lighting work a little too early. I think I needed to start blocking in some more of the composition, like midground, foreground, before I actually started adding some more lighting pieces. Yeah, firelights in the background, trying to get those look correct too. Now I start actually adding some of the more midground, foreground pieces. You can see I actually started doing a little bit more rim work on the buildings. You'll see right here, this pop. I think I did that one way too early as well. Once again, I think I need to work on more compositional of these pieces. Yeah, like I said, I think composition is one of the things that we should keep in mind the most when we're doing personal work. I think good composition does go a long way. You'll see here, I think I even did post-processing a little too early. I think I still need to work on more composition before I started working on post-processing. But yeah, you do see like with post-processing, like that jump, it does start getting a little bit more of a painter effect with it. And you'll just start seeing, and then even more. That was a huge jump. This was actually some really good feedback that I had to really get this like slight glow and a lot of smoke in the background back here. I think that helped out a lot. Yeah, and then from there is just I'm moving stuff around, adding certain elements like a sword, playing more with the rim lighting, trying to get some more character shadowing on the ground right here. Yeah, most of the time, most of my process is about the same, where I start with composition, then I go to adding lights, and then I go into post-processing, and then I finish off anything else I see.
Let's talk a bit more about the process, because when you do lighting on your own personal PCs, or even if you're a student, you're making a portfolio to get the job, you need to know a lot more and do a lot more than you might have to do once you join a team. Because normally, like where I am, I don't have control over the cameras, I don't have control over the composition, even though it's a storytelling game. Someone else is doing every piece. So talk about that, like what are the important phases and skill set needed to pull out a good personal piece, especially for students looking for work, because it's quite different than just doing lighting, right?
Yeah, for personal work, like I said, like composition is everything. Understanding composition, understanding elements in your piece is, I think, key. I think that's the thing that some lighting artists jump past too quickly is, like I did in like this piece. Like I started doing the lighting way before I actually started working, before I got the composition down and correct. I think once again, like a good composition does go a long way. Like watch composition videos. There was one I watched like every single week, like once a week. I like most of the time, like my lighting artists at Sledgehammer Games, like if I show them some of my personal work, the main feedback I get is all composition feedback. Um, Now this composition compared to like working in the game industry is a lot different, because for one, I don't have control over a lot of the environment pieces, so I can't really say like what they should do, what they shouldn't do. Like there's an art direction that does focus on that. Sometimes I'll bring up my concerns if I think something's way too off, but like for lighting composition, like you really want to make sure that you're highlighting certain things. Like I think highlights are another thing that some people early on do miss a lot. Is like I didn't really used to do a lot of these highlights. I think these highlights really helped these buildings out a lot. It made them pop a little bit more. It gave a little more like depth to the scene. Um, Highlights do go a long way. What else? Yeah, I think mainly just composition, trying to get that down is like key. Also understanding like basic um, EV levels, I should say, exposure levels of like sky and day, like certain times of the day, especially if you're doing exterior scenes. Like sometimes I'll see certain times of day, and your shadows look too dark compared to your sun or something like that, and it does throw the scene off, and it ruins the composition sometimes. Like getting a good balance of a mixture of everything is really key.
So let's talk a little bit about PBR and EV and materials, because that can be a bit daunting task to figure out. So
Definitely.
how do you go on about in these two pieces? How do you establish the UV? How do you establish that the material? Do you ever check the assets for PBR, like if they're too dark, too bright? Do you do anything like stuff like that?
Yeah, sometimes I'll do material work where I'll go in. So when I'm getting working with Unreal assets, like when I'm trying to just kit bash like a bunch of different assets together, sometimes I do have to adjust materials so that they look like they're from the same place. So that's really key. It kind of depends on like what setting you're in and what type of mood or what type of like style you're going for, would really depend. As for like sun and sky EV, it's a lot harder inside of Unreal to get it. Luckily, I actually took the CG master course, the Art of Lighting for Games by Omar. He did have a really good process of learning how to get the EVs a little bit more correct inside of Unreal. It's not perfect. We can't get it. We can't get it exactly correct inside of Unreal, but it gave it a little bit closer. Luckily, here at Sledgehammer, we do have tools to actually get physically correct EVs, which is really awesome. But yeah,
Cool. I also took the same course, just to
nice.
see, what happened, and to learn what I've
Yeah,
gotten.
that was kind of my thinking as well. Is like I don't think I was gonna get a huge amount out of it, but I got a lot out of it. I think Omar really gave some good tools, especially for lighting for games, like trying to get certain things in mind, like lighting certain player paths and highlighting certain things. Like you don't need to actually put lights on the players. Sometimes you just need to put a light on a wall that just acts as like a fill light, so that like once a player gets like walks in front of it, it backs like the players and you can see them. Yeah.
So, do you have any inspiration, or people or references do you tend to go to or learn from?
Um, Learning from it's a mixture of like I said, I like learning from other lighting artists. I like looking at other lighting artists' work. I think there's a lot of good lighting artists out there, and just breaking down their work and trying to understand their composition. And sometimes you'll even notice, like, maybe you don't notice these highlights at first, but if you start looking real closely, you'll be like, hey, maybe I don't think this actually came from like the sun. Maybe they actually added this type of highlights. I think really trying to learn from people who've been in the industry the longest, who've been doing this the longest, is really key. Sometimes you can reach out to one of them. Like, luckily, I had friends at 343 that I knew, and I could just ask them for help, and that was a really big help when I was starting out. And now here at Sledgehammer, I have my coworkers that I do reach out for advice, and they give a lot of good advice, and they have all different types of experience. If you can get a really good like group of people, and you can all just benefit from each other because you all have different perspectives and you all have different experiences, and I think all that goes just a long way, especially when you're starting.
All right. Let's see. So if you could go back in time, what would you do differently?
Not much, honestly. I like the path that I took. I think it's good, especially for the job I have here now. The only thing I think I would have wished is maybe take a little bit more modeling courses and a little bit more art courses. I didn't have much art experience when I first started out, so it was all just trying to learn everything by hand. So yeah, I think some sort of basic like art courses would have gone a long way for me.
Cool. And do you have any recommended resources that you would advise people to go learn from?
If you can take the CG Master course, I think that one is a really good help, especially for beginners. If not, the CG composition video I recommended, I like that one a lot. Other than that, it's just try to look for videos and tutorials, and there's a lot of good ones out there. There's even a good Naughty Dog article. They break down some lighting stuff, and I think that one's great as well.
All right. So there's always some resources out there people can look through, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, cool. Do you have any tips and advice for students on what they can do to get a job?
So definitely personality is a big thing, especially when you're going through interviews. I've done some video views where people where I just like they could have really good work, and sometimes their personality is just it doesn't cut it. And I think just making sure you're being yourself, I think is one of the biggest things. I mean, other than that, like having a good portfolio does go a long way. I think as say like an associate artist, sometimes more is better. Sometimes like I have friends who are just trying to get into the game industry, and one of the things they ask me is like, what do I do? Like, look at my portfolio. Like, what do I improve? And I'm like, you have like 3 pieces on here, and like the last time you worked was last piece you post was like 6 months ago. Sometimes that does play a factor as well. Like, we try to be like, you've been out of the game industry for about a year. Like, did something happen? Were you just not interested in working on your artwork at all? Like, we do want people who want to improve themselves, who want to better themselves. So I think wanting to showing you wanting to better yourself and improve yourself, I think is also key. But like when you're starting out, I think sometimes more is better than less. Like sure, like good, like having like 5 good pieces is really good, but when you're starting out, sometimes having 10 pieces, like giving them a variety of what you can do is also really key. Like if you just have all exterior pieces and you have no interior pieces, then they're going to question like, hey, do you not know how to do interiors? Like you want to stop them from questioning making those certain questions of like, does this person actually know how to do interiors? Does this person actually know how to do exteriors? Variety is good. I think.
It's good advice. I do agree that I think in some cases people with good personality, that is obviously very subjective, but good personality and even decent lighting, like they might not be or great lighting artists just yet, but they have a nice personality. You're more likely to get hired versus you're super good. You are maybe on top, but your personality is just not there. And I think that's very common in general, a lot of places.
Yeah, we like I said, like I think good practice as it goes a long way. Like we had a person here that they didn't have much like game industry experience. They have like most of their experience actually comes from like the movie industry, but they had such a great personality that we're like, well, we would love to work with you. I mean, like we gave him an art test, and like not knowing anything about like Unreal Engine and like the game industry, they did a great job on it. And because of their personality, I think that really drove why we hired them the most. Yeah.
Just a reminder for everyone, if you have any questions directed towards, well, preferably Alex, but you're free to ask me as well. You can do that wherever you're watching from, and I'll put that up on the screen. So don't be afraid of interfering if that's what you guys sometimes feel, which I know some of you feel like that. So this is your favorite piece, right?
Yeah, I think this is my favorite. I don't think this is actually the final image of it. Let me see if I can find the final image of it.
I think the final image of it
This guy.
is this one.
Yeah, this guy. There was actually a second image to this one as well. I just wanted a second image in there, so I could have done a little bit better job of like composition for this image, but it was like, hey, I kind of want a second image for this piece, and I just brought it in the camera a little closer so you can see the night a little bit better. Yeah, this is the final image for it.
What's your average
But yeah,
time?
I would go ahead.
What's your average time you spend?
I try to keep projects to about a month and a half. Sometimes they take less. There's a project I'm working on right now. I've been working on it for I want to say about a week, and like I've gone pretty far. I've done most of my steps. I'm now in like the feedback stage where I go ask the people I trust or the people I know the most that I like bugging what I should fix about the scene. So I kind of rushed this one though. Not to say it's bad, but I rushed it because I'm on a certain time frame because I'm gonna be going on vacation pretty soon. So I wanted to get this piece done before I left.
I've noticed some people they have a tendency to ask feedback in private, as you say, with selected groups rather than in a specific Discord and so on.
Yeah.
Would you say you're one of those people?
I do like posting it in some of the art discords. I get a lot less feedback inside those art discords. That's why I like personal a lot better. Especially for the people I know. Like I trust their opinions, and like I know they won't hold back on stuff. Like sometimes in art discords, you don't want to look at someone's piece and like call like 10 different things with it, but like as the artist, you like I want someone to do that. Like I want someone to be like, here's everything I find wrong with your piece. Not to say that your piece is bad, but maybe fixing these could help it out a lot. But like I do think having people who you do trust really does go a long way.
So, is there any pieces you have on your art station or laying around that you would say you could improve furthermore at this stage? Or
I think all of my pieces I can. I don't. I think like they say, an artist's work is never done. I think I can go back and improve everything on every single one of my pieces. Definitely, my older pieces are definitely my worst pieces. Like I can show real quick some of my like oldest pieces. Stuff that's not even on my portfolio anymore. Let's see. This is a pretty old piece. Like a lot of this was just like adding like fill lights, and like a lot of it's flat and some of it doesn't. Like I get a little bit of shape here and there, but like I can go back and improve this 10 times over. But yeah, I do have old pieces that I like I said, I think my artist work's never done, but sometimes you just have to know when to stop and when to move on.
that is true. So, how do you know when to stop? Uh,
Most of the time I stop after I get a round of feedback from most of the people I trust, or maybe a second round of feedback of the people I trust. That's typically when I call it, is when I'm done going to everyone, because I don't want to keep bugging people, but like I know they don't mind, but you know. Yeah.
So I've noticed. I don't know how you are in this area, but at least in the beginning, even still a bit now, sometimes is if I get too many opinions and too many feedbacks, sometimes my piece get worse because it's just too much of different opinions, or even if it's good opinion, it's just a mix of it. Have you ever experienced that, or how's that?
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely gotten a lot of feedback. Sometimes when you get feedback, it's not always something you should follow. You gotta keep in mind, like when you're working on personal work, this is your own work. Sometimes when people give feedback, it's they're trying to add their own artistical touch to it as well, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it takes away from what you wanted. I think that's what you need to keep in mind when you're looking at this feedback is look at the feedback and be like, okay, is this something that is something I 100% agree with? Or is this something that is more of like an artistical opinion? Um, or is it something that like, okay, yes, this say like I was missing like this whole rim right here, like then it was just all black. And someone saying like, "Hey, you should get some rim on that." That's something I should probably actually do. Like getting that shape right there. I think is like would have been key if I didn't have that. But yeah,
Cool. We've gone through all of the questions and
sweet.
more. I think this is a good time to end it, also because I'm feeling a bit more sick. Um, so I would like to thank Alex for joining and kind of giving a lot of good content in just such a short time. That's really
Yeah,
good.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. You can find Alex in our Discord if you want to catch up with him or talk to him. Um, that's up to him. He might be there, he might not be there, but I'll be there as well. There is supposed to be a Discord hangout as well, about I think 1.5 hour from now as well. So we can always meet up then and talk and kind of learn a little bit more about stuff we didn't cover just now, like Unreal Engine 5. People might have tried it, they might have some opinion on it. We didn't cover that. So these are certain topics we kind of keep to the Discord afterwards to kind of keep the conversation going. If you're watching, please like and subscribe and share. That also helps the community grow and for people to be aware of this community. And of course, you can find Alex, our station and LinkedIn in the description, at least the YouTube one. So you should join him and you should leave him. You should connect with him. That's definitely useful, as you know. So yeah, I would like to thank everyone for watching, and I guess Alex, we should say goodbye to everyone, shouldn't we?
Yeah, goodbye. Thank you all.
Goodbye. Bye.